Hello, welcome back. Hope you've been enjoying this video series. So far we've covered incarnations, the plan of creation, the three things, God being a person, the soul's journey, and just about to talk about other planets, the golden age, and finally the Lord's pastimes. And so we'll just do another kirtan and start. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivastava Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivastava Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hare, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. So yeah, other planets. There's like a one of the first books that Prabhupada released to the West was one called Easy Journey to Other Planets, and you can actually get that book, and it's about how if you want to travel to another planet, then all you have to do is worship the deity of that planet, and you can travel there. And on the other side, Swedenborg released a book called Earths in the Universe, where he discussed some of the other planets that are actually just in our localized solar system, and some of the different inhabitants that are on those planets, and different things that they do in different forms. Like on one particular planet, I think I don't know, it could be like Venus or something like that, the people there are in the shape of spheres. This is just an example, I'm not sure if it's exact, but yeah, they present themselves in spherical bodies. But one of the main principles of the universe is that they're in the human form. They're actually in human form because the universe is so designed in relation to the human form, and because God is a person, obviously that personal thing presides throughout the universe. So even in beings that present themselves in other forms like spheres and stuff like that, they are actually human, but they present themselves in a different form. Obviously it's like strange with modern science and stuff. Well, I think one way to understand why we can't perceive the other beings is because we're looking through to actually exist on another planet. And I don't want to go into speculation, but I think that you have to exist on a different, on the vibration, you have to exist at the vibratory frequency of that planet to actually be able to perceive the other beings on that planet. So because we're stuck within the vibration of Earth, and we have a body made out of the elements of the Earth, when we try to perceive beings on other planets, we're only going to pick up on the ones that are within our vibratory frequency or something. Which is why there are other beings on other planets, like the moon is meant to be populated by beings, our moon that's right next to us, and also the sun planet. Swedenborg described one of the planets that's quite close to the sun, I think it's Mercury or something. Those people they're right into knowledge. That can be actually an obstacle if you go too much into knowledge, like I was sort of mentioning before. If you do too much reading or something like that, to just pursue knowledge in itself is sort of, you've gone a bit off balance there. But apparently this whole planet is filled with beings that are just right into their knowledge and stuff. So that's interesting. Swedenborg actually, if you don't know much about Swedenborg, he travelled out of his body and he actually went to the spiritual world and stuff and saw a lot of these things first-hand experience. His book Earth in the Universe is written from the period where he went and he travelled to some different planets in the solar system, and then he also travelled to a distant star, another star in another whole system. He never really said how he travelled exactly. It was something to do with changing the state. I mean, you could potentially think that there could be something like a Vimana or something like that, some kind of state-changing vehicle or something like that. Seems a little bit speculative, I know, but I'm just saying, like, maybe the way that you travel to the other planets could be in some kind of vehicle that could look like what we call the flying saucer, but it's known as a Vimana in the Hindi tradition, and also in the Bible there is a pretty vivid description of not an alien, but a craft in that as well, what you could call an interdimensional vehicle. I think it's in Ezekiel, and he gives some descriptions of what it looks like, and he kind of says that there's these wheels on the bottom of it that turn around and stuff, and it gives a pretty good thing. You could be familiar with it. There's pictures of like Jesus with vehicles in the background of him and stuff, little space vehicles. So I know in some studies on UFOs where they've talked about alien species and stuff, I've heard that we already have, like as a human race, that we have something like 24 alien races already identified, and categorized and stuff, and there's only a couple of malevolent ones, and the rest are generally pretty good and well-meaning and stuff. I don't know how sort of out there you find this stuff, but it is actually in the spiritual materials, so it's not too hard to do a little bit of research on Google and find quite a lot of information. But the difference between the vehicles that are made out of material stuff similar to the earth and ones that are made out of other things that exist on other vibratory frequencies, I think that's the main thing that's going to make the difference as to whether you can see them or not. I know Carl Jung had obviously picked up on different strange things in the UFO experience that made him think that maybe it was partly archetypal or a psychological sort of thing, which shows that if in fact, well, I mean, I'd definitely say that there are these craft and stuff, but that there is almost like a psychological nature to it, which is explained in terms of state and stuff, that it's kind of like an organic sort of vehicle, or an organic consciousness vehicle, or something like that, more so. So, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you hear stuff more so in like the New Age and stuff like that, but actually there's a nice story of a saint. I can't remember his name, but there's one of these Indian saints, and you can follow his story, and he has this thing with his wife anyway. One of the main teachings that he taught was that it's wrong to just renounce work altogether and just like live in the forest and just do devotion. He actually said that you should also do some kind of work or something. So that was one of the things that he taught, but at the end of the movie, at the end of his pastimes, he gets picked up by this big bird. That's actually the end of the story, is he's with his wife, and then it's represented as this big bird that comes down, and a bird comes flying down, and then he gets in it and he flies off, and his wife's just like, oh, my husband. Yeah. So that's really interesting as well. If you look at other planets and different ways that you can travel and stuff, normally people travel by mind and by mantra and stuff, and you can travel in your mind through meditation and have meditation experiences, or like shamanic journeying and stuff like that. So that's one way to travel around. And also yeah, I kind of forgot what I was saying. Yeah, there's other ways to travel anyway. You can travel in different ways and have meditation experiences and stuff like that. So that's other planets. Now I wanted to talk about the Golden Age. So basically, in line with the incarnations, what we began talking about, where the Lord foresees like regeneration, he goes through the glorification process so that the beings in the future can actually be saved. And this is really interesting to look at the history of Christianity and the history of Chaitanya, and also Native American and Buddhism, and Taoism, and their respective prophecies of the future and what's going to happen in the future, dependent on their particular line that they're following through. So with Jesus, you had you had the second coming, which came in the form of Swedenborg's books. So that was the return of Jesus Christ in the form of his servant Swedenborg coming to earth and clarifying all of his teachings. And he wrote like a lot of books and stuff. There's a really good YouTube channel called Off the Left Eye, which has like a lot of the Swedenborg stuff is starting to come out now a lot more, and there's a good Bible study thing called Spirit and Life Bible Study, and so that's a really good way to look at what's happening there. But more so what's understood as the kind of second coming of Jesus was those books, and then also a state of consciousness which was going to descend on the planet. And this is where you're looking at the different prophecies all coming together and looking at this time that we're living in now, and also the integral gets in on this as well. We're looking at a kind of golden age that can come on the earth, and I don't know all the details about what exactly is going to happen, but most people who are sort of looking for it can see a lot of changes that are happening in these times that we're in. And there was like the whole 2012 thing as well, and that kind of joined in with the Sikhs. If you know in the Sikhs, they actually had a prophecy that lined up with 2012, so it wasn't purely a New Age sort of thing. There was a teacher called Yogi Bhajan, and they actually had a big celebration of Kundalini Yoga on the 2012 mark, and for them it represented the turn into the age of Aquarius, so from the Piscean age into the age of Aquarius, and that was perceived as a big change. But also you see in Christianity there was the early church, and then obviously what happened all through those dark ages and stuff, and then there was the return in the form of Swedenborg's books about 1700 and then obviously lots of things have been happening since then. If you go by integral standards, you talk about modernity or whatever, or you can see like a scientific revolution that happened, and then there was the postmodern revolution, which with philosophers like Nietzsche and stuff like that, which kind of opened up a whole new realm of human rights and all these sort of things that were going on. And then of course integral is talking about integral consciousness, which is a type of spiritual consciousness which is happening in a widespread around the world, including Stanislav Grof and the spiritual emergence people also get into that, because the number of cases of spiritual emergence occurring has actually increased pretty steadily from, I think, from like the 70s. It got really common in the 80s and stuff like that. I don't know the details of it, but spiritual emergence, if you haven't heard of it, it fits in with the classifications of like psychosis and stuff like that, but you get really bad cases of psychosis and then coming back in towards more positive ones where they're turned more like spiritual emergence, which include things like psychic opening or UFO experiences or past life experiences or whatever in relation to a spiritual experience, and those have been more common. And yeah, according to Ken Wilber and the research that he's doing, what we're looking for is the 10% margin. There's an idea that there's a tipping point that will happen once 10% of the world's population, you've got the 100th monkey theory, or in Christianity it takes 10 men to save a city. If you've heard that, it takes 10 men. You've got 10% of the population. When they reach integral, it should cause a tipping effect in the whole of society, where society then begins to take on the values of that more spiritual culture. So it's a sort of a more spiritualization of the culture. So looking at this in terms of the prophecies, I like to stick close to what the prophecies said, in those respective traditions. And I know the most about Swedenborg's one, where he talked about a coming together of rationality and scientific knowledge and spiritual knowledge, that all three of those would come together and form one kind of combined thing. And in Chaitanya there's also mention of a golden age. I never really seem to get the details of that much, but I'm pretty sure that there's reference to a golden age actually happening as a result of Chaitanya taking his birth 500 years ago. That he came and he made these like waves of love of God that actually resonated throughout the whole universe. So you would expect that there would be a big result from that, and I don't think it is just something as small as just the Hare Krishna movement, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think it's just those particular people. I think that it's something that's going to affect all of us, and they're all in their respective traditions, because the Taoist cultivators also have one. They call this the time of the lotus flower, and it's one of the best times for, how they say it is like a lotus flower with the flower up there in the stem, and the stem, it's like we're in the stem because the center is this white liquid which is like the spiritual stuff itself, and then there's the coating of the thing which is actually the all the hard things that we actually go through, how hard it is for people to cultivate during these times, and all the pain that they have to go through is actually represented by that sheath that's around the lotus. So, but there's a spiritual core, and I guess the idea is that it actually blossoms in the end. But they also have a prophecy about these times being very spiritual. They've got a spiritual prophecy coming through them. So that's in Taoism, it was Chaitanya. And then in Buddhism I've heard mixed things. I heard something, I'm not sure if they have one. I know that they had one where it had quite a bad outcome. They thought for a while that it would get really bad and then it would get better or something. So I'm not sure exactly of the prophecies in Buddhism, but I think that there's generally a pretty good consensus that these times that we're living in are that something really big is happening, and that yeah, I think for anyone that's struggling or something like that, I think just hang in there, and like, you know, especially whatever financially or whatever, I think it's a good time to be focused on spiritual stuff and to not worry too much about work. I would say I would recommend working less and just focusing on spiritual things. Like, you only really, it depends what you're doing with your money. I mean, if you are donating your money to a spiritual cause or something like that, then sure, your work is obviously your service. And in any case, you can just by means of meditation turn your work into your spiritual practice. So it's sort of like a thing, you could work or not work, but generally I would think that you'd want to put less emphasis on actually working long hours and more emphasis on your personal development and stuff like that, aspects like that. Working in your community, building a bit of community with the people around you and stuff. And yeah, generally, yeah, I'm here for as a support for other people that are doing a lot of spiritual cultivation as well. Obviously, if you work less, then you're going to have more time for meditating and for doing actual service and for research and stuff, you know, for researching all this stuff, because there's a lot of information available on the internet these days. Yeah, there really is a lot of stuff available, and it's just a matter of people going through it and finding new avenues and stuff. I'm just playing my small part. So that's the idea of the golden age or whatever, or this time that we're living in. And then finally, I was going to end on the pastimes, which I guess would kind of bring it back to where we started with the Lord's incarnations. So yeah, looking at the pastimes of the Lord is really it's a really good form of meditation. There's a lot of things you can do in devotional service, but listening to the pastimes is excellent. You've got the pastimes of Jesus a little bit. If you read like Arcana Celestia or something like that, that gives information more about the internal state of Jesus and stuff, and can give quite a lot of information on what he actually went through personally. There's a lot to be learned in that, especially psychologically, understanding the psychology of Jesus as a way of having insight into the psychology of ourselves, and that's through his pastimes, as revealed by Swedenborg. The Bible it's not just the New Testament that's about Jesus, but actually the entire Bible is about Jesus. The beginning of the Bible is the beginning of his life, and all of those stories, there's like 3 levels to it, because there's the actual events of those things that actually happened, then there's the events of Jesus' life, which is running parallel to those original stories that happened, if you can understand what I mean by that. You've got Moses and stuff actually going on there, and then in between that you've got a psychological level where you can understand the symbolic aspects to all of those stories, psychological aspects to all of those stories, and then on top of that you've got the pastimes themselves, which is what was Jesus actually doing in those years in his childhood, what was his relationship with his mother and with Mary Magdalene, his cousins and other people like that, going right up to his public ministry and what he did in those times. So that's really interesting as well. The pastimes are more the best. Krishna Leela is really good as well, but I think the best is actually the Chaitanya Leela. That is really amazing stuff. If you listen to, like, I'll just say again, there's the Chaitanya Bhagavat audio book online. I'm not sure if there's a Chaitanya Charitamrita, but I'd say there will be. There must be an audio recording of that as well. And I think people prefer audio and video formats these days. You can get the books, but I think video and audio is really good, and you can just put on the Leela and just listen to all of these pastimes and stuff. If you want to understand more what the pastimes represent and that sort of thing, then you can read Bhaktivinode. If you read Krishna Samhita, which I want to do a study of Krishna Samhita and read that out in a class and go through what each one of those different demons that he fought and everything actually represent, and what the battles that represents in the individual life of each devotee, and how they live out those leelas in their life, sort of like that. You can understand that level, and then you can just get into the actual sort of relishing the pastime itself, which is just you're relating to God personally, you've developed a relationship, and then there's just the things that you do with God in that relationship and the activities that you do. So one really good activity to do with the Lord is to listen to pastimes, because he or she enjoys the pastimes, enjoys listening to them. So it's something that you can do together in your relationship, or your rasa that you've established. You can actually engage in activities of devotional service. So you don't just have to listen to pastimes, but that's a really good way. There's a lot of other things that you can do, but yeah, I just wanted to end on the pastimes because they're so essential really to understanding, because when the Lord's incarnated personally, and then we get this amazing insight into all the different things that he does, and that can align us with that spiritual dimension. And I don't know, I think it's really interesting, especially the Chaitanya Leela, understanding more about Lord Chaitanya and what he did, as well as Jesus. I mean, I'm interested in Buddha as well. I quite like some Buddhism and stuff as well, which I mainly get from Ken Wilber. But I don't know what else to say about the pastimes. They're just one of the forms of meditation in Bhakti Yoga. You do the pastimes, and then there's just calling the names of the Lord, and it's just really good. So I hope that you've got a lot out of this talk. I almost feel like making another video now. But that was everything that we covered. We covered incarnations, the plan of creation, the three things, God being a person, the soul's journey, other planets, the golden age, and then the Lord's pastimes. So I think I'll just finish on one more kirtan, and then we'll just leave this playlist at that. It's been really good. Thanks for listening. If you listen to the whole thing, that's really awesome. And if you can leave like a comment or subscribe to the channel or anything like that, I mean, that's awesome too. It'd be really good to hear from you. So yeah, all good. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram. Jaya Vishnu Priya, Jaya 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 Jaya Vishnu Priya, Jaya. Radhe 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 Govinda, Govinda Radhe Radhe Govinda, Radhe 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 Govinda, Govinda Radhe Radhe Govinda, Radhe Radhe Thank you. Have a good day or evening. Hare Krishna.